You ever just stop and think about how wild the internet is? I mean, seriously, out of billions of devices online, how does that email from your boss find your inbox? Or how does that video you're watching find its way to your specific phone? It really does feel like magic, but behind the curtain, there's this amazing set of rules, kind of like unsung traffic cops, managing every single piece of data we send and receive. And that kind of leads to this really interesting question, right? Why is it that your video call can sometimes freeze up or get all choppy, but something super critical like your bank statement always seems to load perfectly every single time? Well, it turns out the answer is all about a choice that gets made millions of times a second across the entire internet. Okay, so here's our game plan. We're going to start with the internet's traffic manager. Then we'll meet the two main players, TCP for guaranteed delivery and UDP for pure speed. We'll see how the right one gets picked, figure out how data finds the right app on your computer, and then wrap it all up with the core trade-off that basically defines our entire online experience. All right, first stop, the internet's traffic manager. Before any data can even think about going anywhere, a huge decision has to be made about how it's going to travel. So let's pull back the curtain on this invisible layer that makes that call. And here it is, the transport layer. You can think of it as a logistics manager for everything you do online. Its job is to keep track of every separate conversation you're having, your web browser, your chat app, your online game, and it chops up all that data into smaller, more manageable pieces for the big journey across the network. It's the critical link between your apps and the internet itself. Now, inside this layer, there are two main approaches, two different philosophies. First up, we've got the one that's all about guaranteed delivery. Let's meet the reliable professional of the internet, TCP. TCP stands for Transmission Control Protocol, and the most important phrase to remember here is connection-oriented. See, TCP doesn't just, toss your data out there and hope for the best. No way. The best analogy is certified mail. It establishes a formal, dedicated connection. It waits for a signature, a confirmation of delivery, and it makes absolutely sure nothing gets lost or scrambled on the way. So how does it set up that connection? With this really cool formal process called the Three-Way Handshake. It's like a polite conversation. Your computer sends a message, the SYN, that basically says, "Hey server, you there? I'd like to open a line of communication." The server replies with a SYN-ACK, which says, "Yep, I'm here and I heard you, I'm ready." Finally, your computer sends one last ACK back, saying, "Awesome, got it, let's start talking." Only after that whole exchange does the actual data start to flow. And that handshake is what makes everything else possible. TCP acknowledges every single piece of data it gets. If an acknowledgement doesn't arrive, it just resends the missing piece. And because data packets can get jumbled on their journey, TCP uses sequence numbers to put everything back together in the perfect order. It even manages the speed to prevent network traffic jams. So whenever you absolutely positively need every bit of data to arrive perfectly, TCP is the one for the job. But then we have the other player, and it has a completely different mission in life. Meet UDP, speed over perfection. This is the speedy sprinter of the internet. This is UDP, the User Datagram Protocol, and it's connectionless, which means it just sends the data. It completely skips that whole three-way handshake. There are no guarantees, no acknowledgements, no retransmissions. It's what we call best effort. The perfect analogy here, it's a postcard. You drop it in the mail, you hope it gets there, but you're not getting a phone call to confirm it arrived. And because UDP skips all of that formal setup and tracking, it has incredibly low overhead. It's just lean and super fast. It doesn't need to establish a session, it never waits around for acknowledgements, and if a few pieces of data arrive out of order, well, that's just how they get put together. For UDP, the number one priority is speed, not perfection. So we've got the professional and we've got the sprinter. And this brings us right to the heart of it, the fundamental choice that the internet is making all the time, reliability versus speed. And this chart just lays it all out perfectly. TCP gives you that high reliability, but it's a bit slower because of all its checks and balances. UDP, on the other hand, is way faster, but its reliability is low. So when do you use them? Well, for things that absolutely must be perfect, like loading a web page, sending an email, or downloading a file, you're going to use TCP. But for things where speed is everything and losing a tiny packet of data isn't a disaster, like video streaming, a voice call, or online gaming, UDP is your go-to. And there it is. That answers our first question. Your bank statement uses the reliable professional TCP, but that stuttering video call is using the speedy sprinter UDP.
Okay, but once that data, whether it's TCP or UDP, finally gets to your computer, there's one last puzzle. If you've got a browser, a chat app, and your email all running at once, how does that little data packet know exactly which one to go to? Let's see how it finds the right digital door. The solution is something called port numbers. And honestly, the best way to get it is with this analogy. Think of your computer's IP address as the street address for a big apartment building. But the port number? That's the specific apartment number. It tells the data exactly which application's doorway to knock on. And a lot of these port numbers are actually standardized across the whole internet. We call them well-known ports. For instance, standard web traffic almost always goes to port 80. Secure web traffic, that little lock icon in your browser, goes to 443. Sending an email, that's port 25. This whole system makes sure that when a server sends you website data, your computer knows, this goes straight to the web browser. Now, there are over 65,000 possible ports, and they're broken up into different ranges. And what's kind of wild to me is that this well-known range, the one for all those core services like web and email, makes up this tiny little sliver of the total, just 1.6%. The vast majority are either for other registered apps or are just assigned on the fly for all our temporary connections. So we've seen the formal handshakes, the speedy postcards, and the digital apartment numbers. And it all boils down to one simple but incredibly powerful idea: the core trade-off that shapes pretty much everything we do online. And this right here is the biggest takeaway. Our entire modern internet experience is built on this one choice. Do you need perfection or do you need speed? It's not about one being better than the other. It's always about choosing the right tool for the right job. And that choice is being made for you, millions of times a second. And that leads me to my last question for you. Just take a second and think about what you do online. Are you mostly browsing websites and sending emails, relying on the steady, reliable hand of TCP? Or are you a big streamer, a gamer, constantly riding in the lightning-fast lane with UDP? Now that you know the trade-off, which protocol do you think is really powering more of your digital life?